All right, so I've gone on ahead and hit record. Let's go on ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our Sports for Good locker room chat, and thank you to each of our speakers for taking the time to come today. Before we get started, just want to go over some ground rules for all of our participants. So you will not be able to turn on your video or your microphone. How you will be interacting with our panelists will be through the chat and Q&A function. We would like to have the more formal questions that you would like to see panelists answer over the course of the presentation directed to the Q&A and save the chat for some of the more casual interactions between participants, whether it's a Go Bulls, Go Hornets, whatever. So please be respectful. If we have any inappropriate questions or comments in the chat or Q&A, you will be removed. So please be professional and respectful of everybody that's on here. So without further ado, let's go on ahead and get started. Betsy Mack is going to be our moderator today, and she is the Senior Director of Corporate Social Responsibility and the Executive Director of the Charlotte Hornets Foundation. We have Keenan Harrell, who is the Community Relations Manager at the Baltimore Ravens. We have Adrian
Curry's fine.
Curry, who is the Senior Director of Community Relations at the Chicago Bulls. And Allie, who is the Executive Director of Community Development at the Denver Broncos Football Club. So now, Betsy, if you can go on ahead and take it away with your first question.
Yes, awesome. Well, again, just want to thank everyone for being here today. This is going to be a really great discussion. Obviously, thank you to Sports Biz Camps for putting this on. We're really excited to really talk about all the good that we're able to do through sports. I know everyone probably has a favorite sports teams, and I'm sure that the Broncos, Bulls, Ravens, and Hornets are at the top of your list. So thank you for your support there. Just going to say that. But so wanted to kind of kick it off and give some background to how we got our roles and kind of our career path. So Adrian, I'm going to send it over to you first. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Perfect. Thanks, Betsy. You're so sweet. Sending it to me first. And Betsy and I actually know each other because we're on a lot of calls together on the NBA. So and we'll talk about that later, but it's really a big family with the NBA, which is great. Yeah. But anyways, a bit about my background. So I'm a former college athlete. I'm actually originally from Canada. And so I came to the United States through an athletic scholarship, my twin sister and myself, and which was the best experience I ever had. And, you know, really got introduced to like sort of like the big time athletics that you have at any kind of university. So I went to Syracuse University, which was great. And I have a really non-traditional background, but you'll probably find that a lot of us have a non-traditional background when it comes to the positions we're in right now. So after undergrad, I actually moved to Chicago to go to medical school. And from there, I moved to New York to do my residency. And the whole time I was in New York, and even when I was in medical school, I was like, I don't love this. It's fine, but I don't love this. And so I didn't really tell a lot of people, but when I was finishing up in New York, I had the opportunity to move to Philadelphia. So I've been all over the place to work for the school district there. So you may or may not realize a lot of school boards have all this health sort of systems and things in place. So I got to work over there on a bunch of cool projects. One of the last projects we worked on, we weren't sure if it was going to go anywhere. It was actually doing planning for pandemics, if you can believe it. So very relevant today, but at that time, everyone was like, are we ever going to use this stuff? And then we're doing stuff with the CDC and the World Health Organization. But anyways, fast forward, I moved to Chicago, ended up working there and ended up working for the school system there, and also ended up working afterwards and left and ended up working for some education nonprofits. And so for me, that was like the best way to get my hands on, you know, to really be able to understand the landscape of the city, understand what are the nonprofit organizations that are in the city. And, you know, it was just an understanding who's who. What are the issues that affect our community? What are the things that the schools struggle with? What are the things that people struggle with from the health standpoint and things like that? And so I was very fortunate and had a recruiter reach out to me from the MBA about this position. And it was sort of a position that put together everything I've ever done in my life. So it's like an opportunity where I actually get to use my medical skills, get to use my education in youth development. So, I mean, it's one of these perfect positions, but definitely non-traditional. I definitely wouldn't necessarily recommend going to medical medical school to get this position, but it helped, actually. It does. It's a lot of problem solving every day. You got to think on your feet. But yeah, it's been great. I get to work with people like Betsy, and again, we'll talk about that later, but it's like a big family with the MBA, which is great. We can call each other if we have questions or if we want to think through something. And so I loved every minute of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. Keenan, let's throw it over to you. Let's hear about your background.
Yeah. So once again, thanks for having me. And my name is Keenan. I'm the community relations manager for the Baltimore Ravens. A quick synopsis about my background. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm a proud Tar Heel, born and raised in North Carolina. And when I entered college, I actually entered as a sociology and global studies double major. My plan at the time was to go in, major in those two things, graduate, and then join the Peace Corps. That was my plan. Obviously, I got into college, and my interests changed a little bit, and I knew no matter what I was going to do as a career, that it was going to involve helping others. I just didn't know that you could do it through sports. So one day, sophomore year, I went on Google, and I typed in helping people sports, and I discovered community relations. And from there, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. So I changed my major to sport administration, and I was able to do a few internships in college. And then right after I graduated, I interned with the Army All-American Bowl, doing like sponsorship management and event planning. Once that ended, I got an internship in the corporate sales department with the Baltimore Ravens. And after my first season, I was promoted to full-time. And then we had someone leave from our community relations department. So I was able to sort of strategically position myself to apply for that position internally. And, I've been there since. So that's sort of how I got to where I'm at now.
Awesome. So what we've learned so far from Keenan and Adrian is that what you go to school for isn't always directly where you're going to go into, and plans don't always work out. So Allie, we're going to send it over to you last but not least. What do you have to share with us?
Perfect. I'm going to echo those sentiments exactly. So hi, everyone. My name is Allie Engelken. As Betsy mentioned, I serve as the Executive Director of Community Development for the Denver Broncos. I had a very similar path in terms of uncertainty and finding new opportunities along the way. So my undergraduate degree at Ohio University was in journalism, and graduating, I was going to write advertising copy and be hilarious and change the world through advertising. And when I realized that that was not my passion area, I kind of set out on this journey to find what was next for me. I took a position working for my sorority and traveled the country for 2 years evaluating and establishing sorority chapters across the country. And so by being on different college campuses and seeing the impact that the colleges and the universities, as well as the nonprofits in that community had, I wanted to go back to graduate school, specifically for public policy and nonprofit management. And I had a little birdie along the way, a family friend who worked for a really small nonprofit, who did an informational interview with me. And we sat down, and at the very end, he was like, you've given me all these textbook answers of what you want to do and how you want to change the world, but what do you love? And I was like, I love kids, and I love sports, and I love community service. And he was like, then why is that not your goal? And so with that nudge in the right direction, I went back to graduate school specifically for sport management. I didn't have any of that experience in undergrad. And from there, I was fortunate enough to receive an unpaid internship during the 2011 NFL lockout in Washington, D.C. With the NFL team there. And I spent 6 seasons in D.C., leaving as the Director of Community and Charitable Programs. I joined the Broncos in 2017 and am now entering my 10th NFL season.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for sharing that as well. So quick background on me. I had about a 10-month stint with the minor league hockey team. They actually lost their NHL affiliates, so turned into a club team, wasn't really the direction that anyone really saw. So left that, went to United Way, charitable organization where I was fundraising for about 4 years, was responsible for raising about $15 million a year there. And then I fell in love with the corporate social responsibility world. Working with a lot of large companies to fundraise, I got to see the insight into the day-to-day on the corporate side. And that was my path. So moved over to a technology company leading their national expansion. Opened offices they were headquartered in St. Louis, so opened offices in Dallas, Orlando, and then Charlotte. Fell in love with Charlotte. They were like, time to move to the next location. And I was like, I think I'm going to stay. So then the job with the Hornets became available. And similar to what Allie, you said, it was kind of a mix of everything that I was looking for in my passion points. And Adrian, similar to you, where, all of my different past experience kind of came into play. My nonprofit fundraising, my community development, the expansion piece. So was really fortunate to have, that experience and obtain my role. And I've been with the Hornets. I would have just finished my 4th season, but we all know how that really went this year. But so really excited to be here, and really excited to continue learning from our panelists. So now I kind of want to kick it off where we've talked a lot about community relations and team foundations, and that is in the title of all of our roles. I don't know about anyone else, but I know when I was in high school and everyone was talking about how they wanted to become a doctor or a teacher, it was a very easy career path where you kind of knew the school and the process. With community relations and foundation, all of us have very different backgrounds, but obviously we're all in these roles for a reason. Would love to hear from our panelists on what this means to you and your role. What is the makeup of the departments? How does this really look? Like, how do you describe the day-to-day role of what community relations and a foundation is?
I'll jump in. I'll go with the definition first. So in my role, I define community relations as utilizing the brand of the Denver Broncos to give back and make a positive and measurable impact as an agent for social change. And that's
love that definition. Let's have you enter that in the chat when you're done talking, because that is just phenomenal. So,
and I really see that in a variety of different ways. And when you talk about the differences between departments and organizations, leagues, and teams, it's really finding opportunities to connect players, coaches, staff, and nonprofit partners in the community, and finding that network for good to continue that mission forward. And I'll add this into the chat, and then I'll let someone else kind of add theirs.
awesome.
That's great. I mean, you kind of summed it up, so I'm like, I don't know what else we're going to say, but I mean, it's one of these things. I think with community relations, it's really, under at the Chicago Bulls, community relations for us also, and I saw a question about this too, also includes player engagement, how they engage with the community and how they engage with community organizations. It also includes some of our, we call them alumni or ambassadors. People have different names for them, but people that have played with us before. So if you're looking at like The Last Dance and see some of those players, some of them still work with us and still do things in the community as well. And then also, similar to Betsy, we also have the foundation underneath us. So part of it is like, how can you think of your organization, your sports organization, and how can you engage the community and find out what the community's needs are. It's not necessarily what you want, it's what does the community need? How do they know that the Chicago Bulls, if it's the Baltimore Ravens, if it's the Hornets, whoever it is, how do people see that you care about what's going on there? You want the community to be better, because the thing is, if the community is better, your team is better. So it's in all of our best interest to make sure that if it's Denver or if it's Baltimore or wherever it is, Charlotte, that those communities are better. And that's part of really what our goal is and what we do. And also part of it is a lot of times the players come to us as well and say, what else can I do? I see there's a need in Chicago. You know, people always think of Chicago as being a neighborhood that's got a lot of gun violence, neighborhoods with lots of gun violence, which is true to some extent. And a lot of times players are like, I'm not going to just sit here on the sidelines. And you'll find that with all of our teams. A lot of times they do want to be involved. So part of it is like, they're looking at it personally. What can I do to use my position, my platform to make things better? And for us as a team, we're always thinking, what can we do to make this community better? Because as soon as the community succeeds, our team also succeeds. It's a win for everybody. And there's just so many other aspects of it, but that's kind of a little twist on what Allie kind of blew out the water. So that's a little twist on what also it means.
Yeah, and so Adrian, you made some good points there about the players and about getting individuals involved in utilizing our players' platforms and making sure that we're aligning the team and the players with the community. Let's talk a little bit about that and about how we get our players involved and what that process really looks like.
Sure. I'll tell you from the Bulls, from our
Yeah.
standpoint, it depends. Like you'll find that if you have someone who's a veteran, who comes in. So a few years ago, the Bulls had Rajon Rondo and Dwayne Wade were part of the team. And so these guys are vets. They're going to come in. They're going to know what they want. They're going to be, clear about exactly what they want to do in the community, how they can use their platform. So they come in. They're almost telling us what they want to do. But we have our team right now is the third youngest team in the league, and so we've got we got some people on our team. We had a 19-year-old last year who's from North Carolina, so Kobe White. He's 19, which is barely out of high school, really. So they're not really sure, and sometimes they sort of struggle with that. And I know everyone who's on the call sort of deals with that. You're just trying to find out like what strikes a chord with them, and that actually is from. Okay, I'm gonna get really medical nerdy right now for everyone for a quick second here, but from a brain development standpoint, you actually won't really know what you want to do until you get a little bit older. It's the same thing with your career. It's the same kind of thing. You actually don't figure out, like, you're not really reflective on what you're passionate about or what you want to do. It takes some time to do that. Usually that happens from a developmental standpoint closer to like 24, 25, but I'll stop right there with all the medical lecture. So for a lot of times it's really having those conversations with them, what's important. Sometimes their agent will push them in a direction. Sometimes the team will want to push them in the direction, but it's always the best when it actually comes from them. It's what they really want to do. It makes things so much easier, so much easier.
Yes. You talked about how you have the third youngest team. I think we actually have the youngest team, which comes with its, fun adventures. But no, I think that's absolutely true. And I think having a strong league in the NBA really pushing out involvement. And I know MLB, NFL, same thing there. Keenan, talk to us a little bit about, the Ravens and that process there.
Yeah, so similar to what Adrian said, we have vets that, we'll sign a free agent and they'll come in and they'll sort of already know what they want. They already have their own English. They know what issues or topics they're passionate about and what they're not passionate about. And, we sort of go from there. For a lot of rookies or players that are still under a rookie contract, they're still trying to figure out exactly what it is they're passionate about. When they initially come in, we work with our player engagement team and then also us as a community relations staff to sort of figure out what their personal experiences have been and what their passions are. Players, I think a lot of people forget that, what you see on Sunday, that is that's more than a 3-hour commitment. It is a daily, monthly, yearly commitment, and guys have a lot of important things on their mind to juggle. So in order to come in as a 21-year-old, you got to make the team. You're competing against other, elite athletes. You have to stay healthy. You have to manage all these other things, contract negotiations, all these other things. And then on top of that, you have a passion, a philanthropic passion that you want to use your platform to promote. That can be overwhelming at times, especially to a young player. So our job is to sort of help them decide what it is that they're passionate about. If they're like, hey, I come from a home to where cancer was something that affected us, can you help direct me in that direction? We'll help them go to those events. We'll help them do hospital visits. We'll help them figure out where to donate their money, their time, their resources. And that's sort of the recipe for a lot of our players. But in time, what I have noticed is, for a player whose contract is 4 years, I have seen sort of the cycle of it. They'll come in as a rookie, sort of be wide-eyed to everything. We'll have them out to a few community events, and then they're like, oh, I really, really like doing this. They'll start asking more questions. They'll start doing more research, and then we sort of help them along that way. And the next thing you know, they have their own nonprofit started. They're the face of certain philanthropic cause, and then they become that knowledgeable vet that another team might inherit, or that we're able to get around.
Yeah, and I would add on to that too, if I can jump in, Betsy. I think
yeah,
in all of our roles, we we see ourselves as a resource to the players. And so while the childhood dream is growing up and being a professional athlete and playing for your hometown team, very often you are moving across the country. And so you're going to a community that you're not familiar with, you're going to a team that you don't know anything about potentially. And so for us, when we have the opportunity to meet with rookies or free agents, we become that resource for them of what is happening in the Denver community. So in college, they may have done a hospital visit at Iowa, and Iowa has an incredible program, relationship with their children's hospital. And so they say, I did this in college, but where do I do that here? Or like, how do I continue that now? And so I think for us, it's our responsibility to vet those opportunities and to provide them with really strong and solid advice about ways that they can give back in our specific communities, because to them, we are those experts. And so we are the ones that then make that introduction to the children's hospital, go with them on their first visit and see that spark and see the excitement around, okay, I love it. I get it. I love it. And I want to continue that. And so I think that, from a staffing perspective, it's about being open-minded to the needs of our individual communities, and what is happening in Chicago is very different than what's happening in Denver. And the same can be said for Charlotte and Baltimore. And, we're spread out across the country, but we know our communities better than these players might. And so it's our goal to show them what they can do to make that change specifically.
Awesome. That was great description. Brandon, I'm going to turn it over. Do we have any questions? Want to see if there's anything from the group here? Besides, I see that Will said go Cavs, so I think that may be a typo. I don't know if you meant to put like go Broncos or something, but that's okay. We won't hold it against you.
Yeah, so got a great question here from one of our attendees. You guys are talking a lot about some of the different both individual and team events that you're doing out in the community. What sort of activations and events are you guys doing on game day as well?
I can speak on that real quick. So on game day, there is a lot that goes down. There's a lot that happens on game day, from the stuff you see on TV to pregame ceremonies to postgame, halftime ceremonies. We work closely with our marketing department to sort of help with those in-game activations. And, there's the list is so long, but for us as a community group, we do like pregame military visits. We also do youth volunteerism programming where we have kids come out, meet players, and things like in that manner. Or if we're recognizing a cancer survivor or something like that, we'll have them come out pregame, meet players. So that's, in a nutshell, to sum things up, that's big picture sort of what we do on game day for in-game activations.
Yeah, it's similar, I think, with us too. It's game day. It's all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's gonna be a long one. So you just sort of like, get ready, and that there's a lot of sort of parts that you try to put together. A lot of times there may be things similar to what you say. It depends on sort of what's going on with the game itself. And so like for similar, the NFL has this, NBA has this, but a lot of times it'll be like, this is a game, this is Women's History Month game. So then you're doing things that are related to what's the theme of the game. Not every night is a theme night, but a lot of times they are. And some of that is driven by the sponsor, some of that's driven by the league, sometimes it's driven by your team as well. And so everything, it's Black History Month. What are you guys doing for that? And so everything will look different. And, and a lot of times, on our side, we have the ability to influence even sometimes what's the entertainment happening that day. This year for Black History Month, everyone's like, we need a spoken word person. I'm like, the CR team, the community relations teams, we know someone who's like really great with spoken words. So we're able to bring that person in. But, the NBA is different because we've got a lot more games, and NFL's got a lot less games. And so for us, we have a lot more opportunities, but the NFL's got a lot more seats. So we have a lot of opportunities throughout these seasons to bring people who don't normally get access to games to be able to see what it's like to be at the game. I mean, and part of the community relations piece is thinking about how can you provide access to groups that people feel like they're part of the Bulls community or the Charlotte Hornets community or Denver, whatever community it is, bringing them in so they can see that. So a lot of times I pull on my experience from being a hostess at a restaurant for 5 years all the time. Okay. It's a lot of like making sure people feel good, they're having a great time, that that you're meeting them, that you're sort of telling them what to expect, what's going on. Sometimes it's meeting a player, which is great. A lot of times they'll give a little bit of opportunity to meet a player before a game. We try to minimize that because if any of you also were athletes, you know, like before you, if it's race or play a game, a lot of times you want to keep your head in the game, right? So, so we think about that, or sometimes it happens after the game as well. But it's a lot of running around with different groups, if it's community groups, or sometimes this is an opportunity to talk to a sponsor who also wants to maybe do something else with their community piece. And they're like, well, they're going to be at the game, so why don't you go talk to them then? And so there's so many pieces of it, but it's a lot of running around. It's a lot of fun. It goes so quick.
I would expand on that. You essentially turn into the hostess with the mostest. So usually in community relations, you have a list of things that you have to do that game. And that could be people you need to see, sponsors you need to thank, a kids group that you invited out that you want to drop off swag bags for, or pom-poms to make sure that they're having a good time. But you look at hosting a home game is you're welcoming people into your home. So you're welcoming community members into your world and into your home, and you want to show them the best time possible. And you want to ensure that if you worked with them earlier during the year, that their picture gets up on the video board and they get to meet a player or a coach or a cheerleader or someone that they really look up to. And so you're really just that networking hostess with the mostest of kind of crossing off your to-do list and ensuring that those who come in your doors feels like they're stepping into your house.
Absolutely. I love that. And the only thing that I just want to add too is I think we've all kind of touched on it, but didn't really call it out, that through the game and through the sport, we're able to raise up issues or, different initiatives. Adrian mentioned Black History Month, Women's Month. We do Pride Month. We have, different other community events where, in Charlotte, we're ranked 50 out of 50 in social economic mobility. So we did a whole night around informing our fans about what that means and about how if you're born in a certain, income level, chances are in Charlotte, it's going to be tougher to move out of that. So a lot of people are living that and, affected and impacted by it, but didn't really realize it. So I think something that all of our jobs enable us to do is create that moment where we're sharing that knowledge with the fans, or we're celebrating a specific group or moment in history with our fans and really bringing that to light in a different way. I like to tell people that the Charlotte Hornets Foundation, we're a catalyst of change for our community. So while we may not be directly creating the change, we're able to raise up and lift other organizations and initiatives that are. So, I think that's something that we all more or less have in common without, always saying it. It's really cool to see. Brandon, any other questions before I jump back into mine?
Yeah, I actually had a really great question from Alyssa come in. She wanted to know, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you guys face, whether it's being told no from higher ups within the organization, budgetary restraints, deciding what causes to work with. So just kind of tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you face in your positions.
Oh man.
So many.
I would say, yeah, one of the biggest obstacles, and I don't want to speak for the group, but I'm sure we've all experienced at some point, is you can't be everything to everyone. And so throughout the entire year, we get calls, emails, people will stop by the office and drop off letters for you of, this is a great cause, we want the Broncos to support it. And there are thousands of deserving causes, and it is really challenging because you cannot help every single one. And so I think it's even more important at that point that a team has identified focus areas or causes that really resonate internally within the building and with the players specifically. And so while it may not fit directly with what the Broncos are doing and what our mission statement is and our focus areas are, it doesn't mean that it's not a great cause. And so I think being everything to everyone was one of the first things that I initially struggled with coming into the industry, because you do have this incredible platform. So you want to help as many people as possible, as many times as possible throughout the year. And there's just, to the other questions, then there aren't enough resources and hours in the day and players to help, accommodate each of those requests. So I would say that's one of my biggest struggles.
And I would say the same thing. It's, anyone who works in the sport philanthropy space knows how tough, it can be to say no. There are so many deserving people and organizations and heartbreaking situations that you do want to use your resources for. But, those are in the hundreds and thousands, and the frequency in which we get those types of requests, it's a lot. So we have to, as an organization, make sure that because we're like any other business. We have a budget, we have policies and things like that. So, we can't, unfortunately, like, spend more than we have. Like, everything that we have, we give it away. Everything that we're able to give away, we give away, whether it's grants, our time, player visits, social media presence, things like that. We give as much as we can. We max out our inventory, if you will. But it is challenging sometimes to have to say no and to not be able to immediately impact or help someone, knowing that, your franchise is well known and has a big resource base.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like it's like managing expectations is part of one of the biggest challenges, I would say. I think it's sort of like, I think with a lot of times when we have people coming to us, there's a lot of no's. And I think part of it too is people want to go from 0 to 60 right away. They're like, once they get a meeting with you, they're like going to ask for everything under the sun. And part of it is, it's almost like, and I know Allie and Keenan and Betsy would say the same thing. It's like you're having a relationship with someone. You're like, let's just chat a little bit first before we get married, you know what I mean? But I think everyone wants to ask you for $1 million out the door, and have like players coming to every one of their things. And I think there's a lot of times I say this, it's a lot of management of adults. We do a lot of stuff with youth, and I know everyone does a lot of stuff with youth, but a lot of times it's managing the adults and the expectations there. So I think, it's a lot of like, let's see how this works and see what, how this goes, and just making sure that when you are partnering with somebody, or even partnering is, if it's get tickets to a game, or if it's even, if it's actual money or if it's some other sort of, back to school kits or whatever you're doing, making sure that makes sense, that the other group understands that. But I think people think it's like an endless sort of pit of resources. And if that's money or whatever it is, and a lot of times they see players get paid a lot, it doesn't mean that there's tons of money always to give out either. It's very sort of like, there's a lot of math behind it. There's a lot of like what percentage you have to give away, how much are sponsors have versus how much things are you going to sponsor versus how much are you actually going to give away in a grant, and what does that mean? So there's a lot more behind it, but I think it's managing the expectations, I think, is the biggest one, because I think people want to definitely meet you and get married the next day, and it's like, we're not gonna get married right away.
Pump the brakes.
Just court me a bit. So
right. And also having them understand, like, and that's a great point, Betsy, and I'm gonna be quiet in a second. Understanding what are you as the organization getting out of it? Because I think a lot of times people come and they say, you guys need to do this because that's their cause. But a lot of times you're like, well, actually my cause is, violence prevention. And so you're talking about nutrition, like healthy eating. That's not my thing. It's just okay. What I mean? It's important, but also like, if we're doing something, how does it make sense to meet our goals as well?
Yeah, no, I think that's great feedback from everyone and great insights. I think definitely the managing the expectations is, a huge challenge. Fortunately for, the Hornets. And, I probably would say that everyone else on this call would feel the same as well. But, we have a great league that supports us from the top down and really encourages being involved in the community and, being a part of a league that, faces tough conversations sometimes and doesn't really back away from having conversations or having discussions. And, people may not always agree with the conversations and the discussions, but as long as you can respect each other and learn from the conversation, that makes everyone better. So, kind of going off of that, I would love to talk about, some of the situations we're facing right now in our current climate, balancing everything that's happening with social justice and, racial equity. And like I said, here in Charlotte, we're facing a lot of, the issues with economic mobility, and just looking at how this is not a new topic, not a new conversation, not a new issue, but one that, thankfully is being more so brought to light and pushed into the forefront. And, organizations and companies are being held accountable, and organizations are starting to act and do things. Would love to kind of open it up to the panelists and see, what people are doing and hearing from that. And Adrian, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to put you on the spot because She is doing such great work up in Chicago, and she, shared with us on a lead call. God, maybe that was a couple. That was a
Oh
couple.
my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know when that was. Maybe that was last week. Maybe it was 2 months ago. Time doesn't have any kind of, it doesn't make sense to me anymore. But yeah, I would love to hear from everyone. But I want to toss it to Adrienne and
Sure.
kind of have her share with us as well.
So I think a lot of our cities, which you'll find other places, are really sort of like, it's like you have two crises happening at the same time: social justice crisis, but you also had this COVID crisis, which a lot of times had the same issues are being magnified in either one. And so for us in Chicago, there was a huge disparity, especially with African Americans, and the death rates and just the cases of COVID, and that now we've had the Latinx population jump over the African American population, still way outnumbering other populations in the city. And so, when unfortunately, when the death of George Floyd happened, I looked at it as an opportunity to actually bring together a few things that we were doing. And I think the biggest thing is like, what can we do that's sustainable and like authentic to the Bulls? I think it's something, I didn't want to create anything that was like completely new and completely so totally different, but also thinking about like, how can we really make a difference? To change some of these things. So it took a while. It takes a while to kind of really try to be reflective and not do a knee-jerk sort of reaction. And so for us, we really have been really thinking it through. How do we line up things a lot better to address some of these social justice issues? And I think in Chicago, the biggest issues we run into is this generational poverty. Some communities have never gotten ahead, and Betsy's like, I know some of them haven't gotten ahead. And then also thinking of like recidivism is huge here. So this is people going in and out of the jail system constantly. So you think of this sort of hamster wheel of people that are in our public housing system that have been there for generations, and public housing is supposed to be temporary, and people have been there for generations and generations. Same thing with the jail system here. We've got, if you look at someone who's ages between 20 and like 31, it's a lot of men of color who've consistently stayed in the jail system, unfortunately. And so for us, it's really looking about what can we do to kind of interrupt that a little bit, and how do you do it in a way that doesn't do it in a way that's like authentic, but also you can sustain that as well. And I think, for instance, I'll do a quick example, but with we have a group here in the city that really works tirelessly and they're super committed to that group of men, that age group. They know, if you look at who's probably has the most likelihood of being shot or being a shooter, you can figure it out. Just looking at the data, you can figure it out. So they really work with those men when they get out of jail to say, how can we get you trained in jobs and get you set up to be a lot more stable? And so we're looking to think about how can we give money towards this sort of pot that they have for housing. So if you think about one of the biggest things for all of us, it's always like, housing, shelter, all these things that, make us food, everything. These are the things that give us a lot of stability. So for us, they have, and for some of you that are younger, you remember anytime you move, you're like broke for half the year, or maybe even longer. So, because there's just so many expenses up front. And so for us, it's thinking about how can we help with some of those initial expenses so we can help them get on their way. And I think, we haven't announced this yet or haven't worked out any of the details, so please do not put this to press. But I think, people will probably say, why don't you just pay the rent for a year or 2 years? That's not going to totally make the difference. I think part of it is like, how do you help people, but don't do it in a way that you enable people to. So I think we're really trying to think through that piece too. It's like having this sort of pot of money where they say, I need money for the first month's deposit, the moving truck, the utilities and things like that. So us really thinking about how do we do more to sort of do some interruption in these areas here, because when people say things haven't changed, it hasn't changed because we haven't gotten people out of public housing, haven't gotten them off of this hamster wheel of being in the jail system and things like that as well. And then a quick note about public housing. Our public housing is a new initiative to try to get, this is the Chicago Housing Authority, it's called here, has a new initiative to try to get people out of public housing and into some other homes and things like that. And so one of the things they don't tell you when you do community relations, or if it's the corporate social responsibilities, you have to be super creative. Like, it's a lot of creativity you need every day. And I think we're looking at one of our sponsors who's a furniture company saying like, hey, if we get people if they're getting into a new home, can you help and get them furniture? Because furniture, And all of us remember, sometimes you're like, I'll just be fine with the bed. Don't worry about a couch or anything. Like, how do you really make sure that their home really feels like a home? Their house really feels like a home for them when they move in. But saying like, hey, sponsor, you want to do something here? Why don't we plug you into here? And now we're really going to be interrupting some of this poverty that is happening in the city and getting people to actually move forward a lot quicker and do it in a way that they're not sort of like, they never had a couch. They never had this. All these stories you hear all the time, it's absolutely true. So how do you help with that?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Adrienne. That was incredible. Allie, Keenan would love to hear from you as well, if you have anything else to share on that also.
Keenan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll hop in real quick. So we, starting in 2017, I would say that's when our organization really started to sort of shift its focus to things that involve social justice, racial equality, the criminal justice system, and things like that. Our approach, we have, across the board for a lot of community relations teams, we are not, as an organization, the experts in one specific thing. But we rely heavily on our nonprofit partners and partnerships to sort of help us enact that change that we want to see. So a lot of our support has been monetary or has been financial. So whether it's giving money to a nonprofit that is focusing specifically on these systemic issues, that sort of has been our route. We also have a player-led social justice group within our organization that meets on a regular basis, and I'm in those meetings as well, to figure out a game plan on what it is or what areas in Baltimore City they want to sort of impact. So whether it's issues with consistent housing or employment or gun violence, we sort of narrow on one issue, and that's where players sort of bring their media presence or their platform to. In addition to that, there's social media as well, which has become a huge platform for our organization, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or things like that. Our production team has done a great job of putting out content that supports our mission and makes a clear stance on where we stand on things. And you can go to our website and see that for yourself. But that has become an extremely valuable avenue to sort of educate people and to let people know what you're about, why you're about it, and what change you're trying to do. So that's another avenue that we've looked at as well.
Yeah. And one thing I would add to that, I would say within our organization, we're very similar. Within the NFL, we have a social justice committee as well internally, and sit in on those meetings with our players. But I think what we're seeing is across the board with a lot of athletes, football is one of the only sports that still wears helmets. And so our players are not really seen as people on the field. And so it's not until they take their helmet off for that they can be truly seen as a human. And so from our organization's perspective, we really aim to humanize our players and to give them an opportunity to speak about their experiences, what they want to see happen and the change that they would like to see, because they don't always get that, and they don't always get that same response from fans that they're willing to listen to them. And so from our perspective, we want to amplify those social justice committee decisions of what they're wanting to support or see happen. And so kind of a player-driven approach is what we've taken here in Denver, because we don't want to be making decisions on behalf of our players or have them try to defend what an organization is doing versus what the players would like to see the organization doing. So kind of giving them the microphone every once in a while, letting them write stories, not only on our website, but also for the New York Times and the Players Tribune. Like, what are ways that we can give our players the microphone, the pen, to share their message in a way that we cannot share for them as an organization?
Awesome. So we obviously have talked about social justice a little bit, obviously just the tip of the iceberg there, and mentioned the other pandemic that we're currently in that we all know is COVID. Life isn't what it was 6-7 months ago. We have a whole bunch of high schoolers and professionals on the call right now, and we're living in a world where, school and classes and internships, everything's really up in the air. I know that the Hornets Brandon, I don't know if everyone was on the call when he shared this, but he was an intern of the Hornets, and because of COVID, it was cut short. Our summer interns were all informed that we were unfortunately not moving forward with having them. What advice do our panelists, what advice do you have for these individuals to continue, their career, to stay motivated, to stay, plugged in when it's hard right now, when we don't know what's happening, and, you may have secured an internship and then it got canceled. What advice and feedback do you have for our audience?
I can chime in on it real quick. First piece of advice I would say is, that you will make it through this. In 50 years, when you're asked about 2020, you'll be able to tell the best story ever about how you overcame a unpredictable job market, a pandemic, and you were still successful in your career field in the sports industry. So just know that you will make it through. Next piece of advice would be to continue to reach out to people. I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, it's never too early to make one. If you see someone who is doing a job that you want to do one day, reach out to them, build a relationship, and keep that network strong, because networks are very important. And then my last piece of advice is, don't be afraid or don't resist taking an internship opportunity or job opportunity that is outside of sports. Like any other business, if you're good at something, if you're good at a skill, it's going to translate to any industry. So if you want to do community relations, but you got an internship opportunity with a construction company, but they need help with their event planning, still take that opportunity, because that's going to help you with your event planning skills. It's going to help you with your organizational skills. And you can still talk on those things in your interview and put that on your resume when it is time to apply to that sports position. So there's still tremendous value in non-sports related internship and job opportunities. And that's my advice.
That's
I would
great.
say my best piece of advice is to give yourself grace. We are all weathering the same storm. We're just all in different boats at this point. So understand that you are not the only person going through a challenging time, and that everyone is trying to figure it out all together. I would say from a career standpoint, specifically in community relations, there is nothing right now stopping you from volunteering. So if you do not have an opportunity with an internship or a job, or that has been on hold or cut short, whatever that may be, what we've seen is a lot of our nonprofits that are providing essential services to the community have actually seen an increase in need. So our food bank has seen 100% increase in those who are reaching out for food assistance, and a third of them are reaching out for the first time ever. They've actually been hiring more staff during COVID at the food bank than they have any other time during the year. And so there are nonprofits that have risen to the occasion and are doing great work. And if you have time on your hands, you feel comfortable in that setting, you are healthy, you meet all of the CDC guidelines, and you answer no to all the questions, and you find yourself compelled to volunteer as a way to give back at this point, especially interested in CSR, community relations, then that would be my advice too. Of the communities need the help right now, whether or not we are in a pandemic. And so if you have the time, this could be your opportunity to do so.
That's great. You're right. Volunteering there's so much need for volunteering right now, so much. Another thing I would do during this time, if there's because I think we were in a similar boat. We, our interns, we get to cut them short, this year, and then we're not even sure if we'll have interns next year. But I think, there's always, this is like also a great opportunity to spend some time to do some more research and also to learn. I know it sounds really like, okay, yeah, fun stuff, but I think there's a lot of other groups that are out there that are doing things. If you think of the sports and social justice space, Arizona State has a institute. It's the, what do they call it? Global Sports Institute, which talks a lot about race and sports. And they have a lot of times, they'll have conferences and things like that you can log into now, which you might not have time to do at other times. Even thinking about the corporate social responsibility piece, or the social impact. I mean, there's so many names for it. Social impact, another good group that has a lot of conferences, or even has, they record them and you could pull them up as well, is Engaged for Good. And they pull together a lot of the companies they're not necessarily sports related, but a lot of times you have to pull on examples or see what other people are doing. It keeps your game fresh as well when you're thinking about what are things we can do in the community because someone else did this really cool girls fellowship for a year or something like that. And it might be another company, but you can pull on those examples. And even when I interviewed for my position, I remember having to pull on examples from other industries as well. So I think it's a great opportunity to spend the time to learn a little bit, look around a little bit, and see what other people are doing and have those great and then it might show you you might end up geeking out about somebody else or another industry or something like that as well. So it's super helpful, I think, just to spend some time to do a little bit more background information, background sort of building as well.
Awesome. Okay, so everyone listening, we have our action items. So Keenan said LinkedIn. Make sure everyone has a LinkedIn with a professional headshot or picture and get that all lined up. Allie with our suggestion of volunteering. Love that one. I've encouraged individuals to do that as well. And then Adrian encouraging us to continue learning and researching and looking at all the resources that are out there on the web right now. So great feedback, great action items and next steps. Brandon, going to flip it back to you one last time, seeing if we have some more questions before we close out.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, so those are some great action steps for how to really capitalize on this abundance of time that some of us find ourselves in during COVID. Kind of building off of that, let's say, and we've established that there is all sorts of different journeys and ways that you can end up where you are today. But if you're sitting down and looking to add a new addition to your corporate social responsibility team, what sorts of education and experiences are you looking for to make a candidate competitive?
I will jump in because it goes off of my last answer. So I think I'm hoping from this call, you will see that there's passion within each of us for what we do and why we do it. So if you are interested specifically in community relations and you're applying for a community relations position, something that I look for is someone who volunteers in their spare time. So if you were telling me that your passion is improving the community and giving back, but yet you don't make in your personal time to do that, then I question that a little bit. And I want to know, where your passions lie and why they're there. I would say within our roles, we work, especially during seasons, an extraordinary number of hours and days, and you're stringing weeks together without a day off. You have to be passionate about what you do. And so that's one thing that I look for is passion. And that's really hard to come across in a resume or in a cover letter without meeting someone face to face. And so the way that I see passion on paper for community relations is specific volunteer work.
That's a good one. I think for us, it's not so much the educational background. And sometimes if I see sports manager, I'm like, get the bonus, that's great. But I think on our side, I try to look for someone who has a good understanding of where they are and how they can contribute to the community, and understanding what are the things that are affecting the community, especially in Chicago. We had a couple people on our team that were from out of state, and they could do parts of the job, but couldn't kind of get that deeper piece about understanding what's happening in the city. And you can learn that. It takes a little bit of time, but you can learn that as well. But I think this, someone who really is creative, I think that's one of the biggest things I look at as well. Like, how can you really be creative about doing something that would, is a really cool thing that we all want to do. Like if we're coming up with examples, you're like, we're gonna do a coat drive. I'm like, okay, I heard that before. Something like exciting, what I mean, that gets you excited and will get like the players excited, gets even maybe, a sponsor, somebody else like that excited as well. And something that you want to be a part of, or would something that be like cool to post on social media as well. So I think creativity is one of the biggest things I look for, and I try to really kind of push in my questions with that. And I think people that understand like what we do is sometimes I say 9 times out of the 10 things we do in the week have nothing to do with basketball. And I'll probably just understanding that, like a lot of times it's like my job, I don't work for basketball operations. It doesn't matter to me what the players do. If the team's great, it's great, but I don't manage that piece at all. And so understanding that. And I think sometimes what I tell people, sometimes I tell them, this is sort of framing it sort of in the negative way, and I want to acknowledge that. But I think sometimes people are just like, I just need to get in. I'm like, that's not my job to just get you in the door here. I need someone who's really going to do this work and like understand it and really, really be reflective on like what they're really doing and the opportunity they have to do it, but not just like, I need to get in and I applied for at every department. I'm like, well, that's not helpful to me. Or like, I'm the biggest Bulls fan. You can be, but that's not going to help me. And I mean, I need someone who's going to, hustle, and someone who's also going to, understand that what we're doing we're just, I mean, any of us will say the same thing. We're grateful. And we know we have like the best job ever. Yeah. We're the best job, and so someone that can really appreciate that piece and not thinking that they're going to be calling plays on the bench with the coach the next week, because it's not what's going to happen.
I have to make a confession. So I know like CSR community space, like so well, like when I went in for my interview, I was like, I got all that. I did not know basketball. So you would have thought that I was like interviewing to be the coach. Like I had like the plays listed out. I had positions. I had like the roster. Like I had everything down. I was like, don't ask me like, the history of like where this play came from. Cause I was so caught up in like researching that like, I almost like, yes, we're a basketball team, but at the end of the day, like my role is not putting in our players or like deciding those plays. And so I think it's really funny because a lot of our roles, our backgrounds are so different, and having sports, like Adrian said, it's a bonus, but I think only one question.
Not a whole bunch to add. I mean, y'all summed it up perfectly. Being proactive, being knowledgeable, being passionate, because you can, if you're not passionate about it, you can definitely get fatigued. But just do your research, and coming to an interview or to any position prepared and knowledgeable about what you're walking into. That's always being prepared is a habit that will always serve you in your best interest. So.
Awesome. Okay, so final question. Want to go around, and we'll start with Allie, and have final insight. If you could give yourself some advice as a high school student, what advice would you have benefited from, and what advice do you have to share with our audience? One final thing.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I didn't receive until graduate school. So one of my favorite professors gave me this quote, and it's on my wall right now. It is what I live by. Make a decision and then work to make it the right one. And the reason I bring that up, I'm going to say it again. So make a decision and then work to make it the right one. You will find yourself in a variety of positions. And if you cannot learn from every single position that you are in, every single class you're taking, every single internship, volunteer experience, you will not grow within the industry. So if you take an internship and you come home from your second day and you say, I hate it. Well, you made that decision, so you need to work to make it the right one. So learn from that internship. What do you hate about it? Why don't you like it? Why aren't you feeling fulfilled? Why aren't you challenged? And then use that information for when you're making your next decision, that you are smarter, you are better prepared, and you are ready for the next step. So if you're going to do it, kind of put your whole heart into it, and you're going to learn something positive or negative from every experience you're in. You just have to be true to yourself and take that with you to the next step.
I love that. I love that a lot. Adrian, what do you have for us?
I'd just say be kind to yourself. I think a lot of times we're really hard on ourselves and we expect to be, why am I not at this level here yet? It's like there's like, enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and just be kind to yourself, and just remember like you're learning. And sometimes you see people and you have no idea how many mistakes we've all made. So many mistakes, but we've learned from them. So it's like everything is not perfect and wrapped up in a bow like you see it today. It may be today, but it was rough along the way there. So it's like be kind to yourself.
Love that. Keenan?
So I think mine would be to this is from Bruce Lee. I watched this ESPN 30 for 30. It's called be water, right? So be like water, meaning be flexible, understand that things are always going to change. Nothing ever just stops. You don't arrive to a point and then that's it. It's always going to be learning. It's always going to be difficulties. It's going to be victories, highs, lows, but just keep your eye on the prize and keep your vision big, not narrow. Keep it big so you can see everything, not just what's in front of you. Because you'll miss out on opportunities that way.
I love it. Great advice from our panelists. So I know we have about a minute left, so just want to wrap up and say thank you again, Adrian, Allie, Keenan, obviously Brandon, thank you for helping with our questions. Jeff, thank you for bringing us all together and having this amazing conversation. I hope that everyone was able to learn some great new things. And Jeff, I'll flip it back to you.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for your contributions today and your transparency and insight. If there's one thing that we wanted students to take away from this session, it was learning the skill sets necessary to be great in the industry. And I think you guys very clearly stated that that's a passion for helping others, and a vision for improving the community, creativity, and attention to detail. And as long as students can kind of better understand what the pathway to a position in CSR looks like, I can't see any way that they haven't come out better after the last hour of hearing all your guys' insights and stories. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Betsy, great job guiding the conversation as you guide our organization and our nonprofit as part of our advisory board. So thank you both for participating today, and then for all of your overall contributions to what we're doing here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for both our panelists and our participants coming and asking a lot of great questions. For our participants and our campers, do not forget to check out the Career Explorer program, where you can take care of some challenges and tasks to win scholarships and other sports-related merch. And I know a lot of the questions that got asked today that we didn't have time to get to involved athletes' individual roles within some CSR events and the community. So be sure to return for our locker room talk tomorrow, where we're specifically going to be focusing on athletes' impacts within the community. Thank you again so much to all of our panelists. This was a great, really insightful session, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.